Okay, welcome back to the third part of One Man's Faith. We're looking at the beginning. We've gone back to Genesis 1 and 2. And we're looking at the fact that chapter 1 gives us an overview of creation. Chapter 2 gives us a more detailed view, especially of the creation of man and what God said to him. Chapter 1 talks about God said, and it happened. Chapter 2 tells us that, when God said this, this is what happened. And especially about the creation of man and how that came about. In chapter 1, we see that the main way God created was with his words. It says, and God said, let there be. And there was. God didn't pick up a wand and say, poof, world, poof, water, poof. No, God said, let there be. And that is going to be important. Because when he created man, he created you and me in his image. Which means we have the same potential that God has. Because we are his representatives. God gives us his order. God is a God of order. He is not a God of disunity and disarray. There was an order in the way things were created. First, there was light and darkness. Then there was separation of the heavens. Then there was dry land. Then there was vegetation. Then he created the sun and the moon and the stars. Then he created all the fish and the birds and all the animals. And then he created man. There was a reason for that order. That was because the next item in line needed what was happening above, which means we were created last because we needed the sun, the moon, the stars, the vegetation, and the animals. He created us last because he wanted us to be a sustainable force when we came into existence. And so all the vegetation and everything else was created before us. Even the animals, they were created before man. God made us in his image. When it says he made us in his image, the word means that we are a representative figure. In a sense, we are ambassadors, and that's what the New Testament tells us. We represent the image of God. See, God is a spirit, and that's the other side of who we are. We are to model God to the world, to the animals, to everything else. We are to model God. And God is a spirit, and he says, okay, we're going to make man in our image and in our likeness. And so we are his representatives, and we have his likeness. We have a spirit. And that spirit was made alive by God when he breathed into man. In chapter 2, he breathed into man, and man came alive. But when man sinned, his spirit died, and we became dead men walking. That's why if we have not accepted Jesus as Lord, when we die, we die. Your spirit's alive, but it's a dead spirit, and therefore you, because you are that spirit, really, you go to a place of punishment. But it's all because we are created in God's image. Being created in God's image, when God said and things came into existence, when we speak, we create. And we either create life or death. Proverbs tells us that life and death are in the power of the tongue. And so we create things good and bad. We should only create good. But a dead man speaking creates dead things. And so this is where Satan gets his power from. We'll see that. We'll see that later. In verse 28 of chapter 1, it says, "Then God blessed them," man, and said, "Be fruitful, multiply, fill the earth, subdue it, rule over the fish of the sea, rule over the birds of the sky, rule over every living thing that moves on the earth." That's the edict that he gave man. He says, hey, man, hey, this is your job. Subdue the earth. Rule over it. Okay, each day of creation, when God created, it says, and he said it was good. That word really means it was complete. And then on this day, on day 6, after he finished man, he said, it is very good. He said, okay, everything is now complete. Everything is now in place. God blessed man. He spoke a blessing over man. That's what verse 28 says. And then God blessed them and said, be fruitful, multiply. Fill the earth, subdue it, rule over the fish, the birds, and every living thing. So that was the blessing. Listen, a blessing cannot be taken back. We saw this before in Genesis 20:21, when Jacob had 2 sons. Isaac had 2 sons, Jacob and Esau. And he told Esau, he said, hey, go catch some game, cook it for me, I'm going to bless you. Jacob's mother heard this and said, hey, while he's gone, you're going to go in and pretend you're him and get his blessing. And we know, if you know the story, this is what happened. And when Esau came in, he said, Dad, here's your meal. And Dad said, who are you? He said, who am I? I'm Esau. He said, well, who did I just give your blessing to? And Esau broke down, mad and hurt, and said, Dad, give me something. And Jacob said, I can't. I have given your blessing to him, and he's going to rule over you. See, a blessing cannot be taken back. The blessing that God poured out upon man when he said, be fruitful, multiply, fill the earth, and subdue it, still held after sin. Because a blessing cannot be taken back. And so when man sinned, we now have dead men ruling the earth with dead spirits. Whatever happens on the earth is based on what we do. That's why it's important as a church, as a Christian, that we speak blessing, that we speak truth, that we allow no unwholesome word to proceed out of our mouth, but only such a word that is good for edification. In other words, only good to build up. Because we create things, because we are still in charge. What happens on earth is man's responsibility and man's problem. We're not a parasite. God put us here to rule, to subdue. We should be doing it out of grace and love, and not tearing apart the world thinking, oh, I don't have anything to do with what happens in 30 years. You do. We do. So we've got to watch out. We are subdued to rule. That has been given to us. God made the earth for us. And he said, you subdue it. You rule over it. It's your responsibility. Whatever happens is going to be on your head now, not on mine. I've given it to you. That's why Jesus had to come as a human being. He had to come because man has rulership. And to get back the rulership, he had to be us. That was the whole purpose for Jesus having to come like you and me. I mean, it wasn't that God could just plop him down. No, he had to be born, because that's the only way you could come into rulership of the earth. John 10 tells us this. It shows us this. We've got to understand Jesus had to come as a baby, come all the way up through the ranks as a boy and a young man into becoming a man, so that he, when he started his ministry, could take it as a full-fledged man. Jesus was a man on earth. He wasn't God. He gave up all of his rulership to be like you and me, so that he could win us back, because he had to take on the curse as a man, because man is what had rulership of the earth. And by taking on that curse, he took all that off of you and me. Hallelujah. And you and I are set free. But it all started back at the beginning. Since we are made in his image, we have the power to create the same way God did, by what we say. So in the beginning was God. God then created all the heavens and the earth, and in creating the earth, he put an order into the earth. He put the light. Actually, when it says light, light and darkness were mixed together in that. And so he pulled out light and set light apart from darkness when he made that statement. He then set up the heavens on day 2. We've got the sky, which is the heaven above us, the one. We've got the outer space, which is the second heaven. And then we've got heaven, which is the third heaven. That's what God did in day 2. Okay, I've got to take this last break. We'll look at the rest of this, and I'll be right back.